you a little bit of an opener here. I know people will continue to filter in. You'll see some seats between you here, so I hope that you'll pass the ground rules along as we move forward. So the first thing I want to do is I want to tell you a little bit about how this happened. There we go. The mic keeps getting louder. It's awesome. So how this happened. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on. A lot of things.
It could be me.
One of the mics picking me up back there? Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to make this work. So obviously there are a lot of things happening nationally, and it sparks a real conversation, and that's a good thing. I'm a big believer that you cannot solve complex issues with a single solution. It takes a complex solution. And if we're going to solve this, then we have to have a discussion. Discussions can only be put forward with the ability, with respect, and with honor to one another. We are one community. We might all have different opinions. And in fact, I guarantee you in this room, whatever you think, the person next to you probably doesn't think the same way as you do. Okay? And that's okay. That's what makes up a great and rich community. But ultimately, we have to talk about it. We have to find out how we work together. So I want to give you kind of the outlay of the forum. We are going to kind of go through, I'm going to lay some ground rules, okay, and then we're going to go through here and we're going to give each of these folks up here, we're going to introduce them all and give them a few minutes. This is an education to you on what we are doing here in the city of Maricopa with the different charter schools and at MUSD. It is also going to be an education back to us from your suggestions, your ideas, your questions. And we are going to try and list in real time. I think we have that done right there. Thank you. We're going to list in real time up here what these suggestions that you come up with are. And then this is not going to be the end-all be-all. We want to take those suggestions and break it down into another several meetings, a meeting or two, whatever we need to do so that we can start going through those suggestions and find out what might work, what is palatable, what does the other jurisdictions that come along and have a say in this, what they will allow for, what they won't allow for, what we need to do to take it to them, and how are we going to deal with it. And so this is a lot of information, I know, but I want you to understand that this is just the first. It's only the start, and we have to start somewhere, okay? So as we talk about starting, I want to introduce a young lady to you. Her name is Destiny. This is Destiny Warner. So let's give Destiny a big round of applause. So Destiny emailed me about a week ago, and she said, you know, in light of all the things happening, I would like to sit down with you and take some time and get to know what we as a city are doing, right? And, you know, as I thought about it, I thought, there's going to be quite a few people that maybe have similar questions as Destiny has, right? And so I just wanted to point out what it means to have representative government. I also want to thank Destiny for doing that, because at the end of the day, all of us are here today because of that suggestion. So thank you, Destiny. And she is going to give us, she's going to lead us off tonight with the first couple suggestions as well as a question. So when we get to that, that's what those cards are in your seat are for. Now, just real fast, give you a little bit of information about me. My name is Christian Price. I'm the mayor of the city here, and you know, one of the things I have come to learn is that in overlapping jurisdictions, you are limited in your powers. Okay, we as a city have certain powers, and we don't have others. The state maintains certain powers. The federal government maintains certain powers. And so that means the schools, for example, have certain authorities. And because of that, we have to work together if we're going to accomplish these things. You know, I grew up in Tucson, and in Tucson, my mom was a speech pathologist in the Amphi School District for 25 years. I know what it means to live a teacher's life. At one point, we were all in college, and all of us were living off my mother's salary as a master's degree, making something like $20,000 a year. So I fully understand what that means and what it is to how it is to go through that. The other thing is I want you to know about me is that I have 4 young children in school, and so I understand what it is to be concerned about this topic. But I also want you to know that tonight, and we'll go to this first slide, please. Tonight, we have to set some ground rules, okay? We want to hear from you. We want you to be passionate. We want you to be honest, but we want you to be respectful above all. We need you to know what we can do. We need you to know what we can't do, and we need to think outside the box. If you've ever heard me speak before, I've often said you first must define the box before you can think outside of it. And that's what I hope we're able to accomplish tonight. Let's define it, then let's start thinking outside of it so we can come up with ideas. The federal government has given us some rules and regulations, and we have a little thing called the Constitution, don't we? And that Constitution sets the ground rules, and anything that's not in the Constitution goes to the states. But the feds get to say, because we all agreed to it, whether you knew it or not, when our state came into being, okay, and all the other states, when they came into being, the feds, we agreed to the Constitution. And in there, there's something called the Second Amendment, right? You can love the Second Amendment, you can hate the Second Amendment. I really don't care, okay? What I care about tonight is the fact that that exists, it's been ratified, we've agreed to it, and until we change it, it's the law of the land. Tonight is not a gun debate. It can't be a gun debate. I'm not saying we can't address the issues that come and arise because of it. What I am saying is it cannot be a gun debate because it cannot be solved at the local level. It does not mean there are not things we cannot do. It just means that we cannot solve the situation by itself because that's a federal amendment. Does that make sense? Okay. So, there may be a time where I stand back up and point to that slide again and say, remember this. This is not a gun debate tonight. Okay? This is a decision on what we can do here locally. Anything not derived by the Constitution gets sent forth to the states. There's 50 states. The 50 states have their own constitution. We call these folks the state legislature. We have a governor, we have a Senate and a House here in the state of Arizona. And this state legislature sets the law, and the law is called the Arizona Revised Statutes. The Arizona Revised Statutes are what govern all these municipalities. Okay? So if we'll go to the next slide. This is what Arizona Revised Statutes 1330-3108D says. It says, a political subdivision, another name that is not so cutesy that they give to us, the municipality, of this state shall not enact any rule or ordinance that relates to firearms and is more prohibitive than or that has a penalty that is greater than any state law penalty. A political subdivision's rule or ordinance that relates to firearms and that is inconsistent with or more restrictive than state law, whether enacted before or after July 29, 2010, is null and void. So where does the power lie there? Does it lie with us at the city of Maricopa? It lies at the state level. Okay? And ultimately the federal level, because we went through this just 5 seconds ago, didn't we? Okay? That's why tonight is not a gun debate. Again, it does not mean we cannot discuss issues and how to protect our folks. But once again, it says that's where that authority lies. It does not lie here. So we have to define this box so we can think outside of it. Clear? Clear as mud? Excellent. All right. Let's see, I think I have another slide here. So we also wanted you all to have a place where if you felt that your question wasn't addressed tonight, if you felt that your question didn't get answered, that you had a place to email us, okay? And we really want to thank MUSD, the Maricopa Unified School District. They provided this room. They're hosting us. It's officially their forum, but it started here, and I wanted to give you the background. So with that, please write that down, safetyforum@musd20.org. Tonight, again, is the start. Do not think that we will solve all of the issues and all of the challenges tonight. But just because we don't solve them all also gives us no reason to let it go. Okay? We can continue to work on them. And what we will need to do is we will need to take these ideas we come up with tonight and we'll need to break them down further. We'll need to investigate them. We'll need to create a buffet or a palette, a slate of ideas that are feasible that we can take to our state legislature and say, here you go, we're going to serve it up for you. What about these ideas? And we can take these ideas to other local areas, other municipalities, and we can help spread that message, okay? But until we do it here first, then nothing else is going to matter. So this is the starting point. This is the starting place. And again, you are going to see in this room tonight that you see a variety of different ideas, different thoughts, different opinions, and that's what makes us special. But the ability to do it in a respectful way is the most absolutely critical and crucial way of overcoming tough subjects. I know we can do it, and I look forward to your help in doing it tonight. So again, many thanks for being here. With that, we're going to pass it on, and we're going to go down the line here so that each of these folks can be introduced, and they'll tell you a little bit about whom they're representing and what they are doing, and that's going to be the opening salvo here. So we'll start on the end.
My name is Amy Sundin. I'm the principal at Legacy Traditional School. As part of our school, safety is our #1 concern for our students. We do everything we can to make sure our campus is safe, the kids are secure. We have plans in place that we can practice fire drills, lockdowns, campus drills. I'm not at liberty to discuss them with the public, but I do want to say that our first priority is our student safety.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Alfonso Alva, and before I get started, I'd like to say thank you to my Pathway families, my teachers, and my leadership for showing up tonight in support of this event. At Pathway, we do practice the lockdown drills, fire drills. We're currently working in conjunction with Maricopa PD and Sergeant Kuzer's team to review our lockdown drills. We have scheduled meetings upcoming to review those plans and to put those plans in action and to come back to the table and see where we can improve, because student safety is our #1 priority and will always be our #1 priority. And so thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
My name is Steve Chestnut. I'm superintendent of Maricopa Unified School District, and I appreciate charter school colleagues being here tonight. We work closely together. We share students back and forth all the time, and so that's a good thing for us. Just to kind of follow up on some of the things that Mayor Price was saying, student safety has many facets in our school district. There's a lot to it, and I want to go into a little bit of detail about that. It really starts, I think, starts from the top, really, the governing board and myself. Safety is a huge priority for our governing board and for me as superintendent. And we start the year every year with an all-staff meeting, and when I first arrived 6 years ago, the thing I did was go over my 5 expectations for all staff members. And you might think that my #1 expectation would be high levels of student achievement, academics. It's not. That's #2. The #1 thing that I remind staff of every year, our very first and most important priority, is student safety. Because if kids don't feel safe, they can't learn. And if moms and dads don't think that our schools are safe, they're not going to send their kids to our schools. I mean, it's just that simple. And so we take that very seriously. A lot of other things to student safety, though. There's many, many facets to it. It's not a simple issue. I think one of our foundational things that we do that keeps our schools safe is that our teachers, our principals, our bus drivers, all of our staff members have relationships with students. They know them, they talk to them. And in all honesty, just having the override passed this 2 years ago, being able to lower class size with 43 additional teachers has helped that, because we've had smaller class size where students can get more individualized attention from teachers. We also work on the little things, and we know that safety in schools starts on a low level, right? You got to follow school rules. There can't be name calling, there can't be bullying. We do take those things seriously, and we work on student behavior all the time at every school. We have been working hard for the last couple of years on a research-based behavior program for our students. It's called PBIS, is the acronym for it, Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. It's a national model. It's used in schools all across the nation, and it's very effective. We've trained all 6 staffs at all 6 elementaries. 3 of the schools are in their 2nd year of implementation. 3 schools are in their 1st year of implementation. Next year we plan to train both middle school staffs, and then I'm hoping that the high school someday will follow. But that is a way to work on improving student behavior so we can focus on academics and doing it in a positive way. And so that's been helpful in the last few years. We've had an emphasis on adding counselors in our school district, and as a result of the override, we were able to add 3 counselors at the elementary level. In prior years, we had none, and that is very helpful also. I wish we had 1 at each of our elementary schools, and maybe someday we can get there. But that is an example of one of the facets of school safety. We need counselors in our schools. We have them at the secondary schools already, but it's been nice to have them at the elementary level. We have lots of positive activity for students, right? Kids that are actively and positively involved in school, they're going to enjoy that. It's going to be good for them. and that contributes to school safety. We have athletics, we have clubs, we have after-school programs. I know my charter school colleagues do too, and those are the kinds of things that build a positive place for kids to be involved. For the past 3 years, we've had 3 school resource officers. Prior to that, we had 1 only at the high school. That was through a generous grant coordinated by the city, and it was a wonderful support from the city, making those SRO officers possible, 1 at each middle school and 1 at high school. Maricopa High School is a big high school. We're up to about 2150, right? A lot of students up there, 2,150 students. So we have 5 security staff members, and they do a great job. They have good relationships with the students, and that really helps a lot because kids talk to them. And that's in addition to the 2 assistant principals we have and the dean. Of course, we have principals there, and the principal is there, and teachers do a good job. Being in the hallways, those kinds of things by our staff go a long way. We have upgraded our cameras at the secondary schools. We have installed new cameras this year at Maricopa High School and Maricopa Wells Middle School. They are not completely finished. I think we're down to about 99% of the work being done, and but they are a major upgrade, and they should be online any day at both schools, completely working. And so that has been an upgrade. We plan to do a similar upgrade to the cameras at Desert Wind next year. We revise our emergency response plan each year. We practice the drills. That's a big part of what we do. We have good communication with Maricopa Police Department. We greatly appreciate their partnership. And I have to say, I'm not trying to make it sound like we have it all figured out. We do not. This is something we take seriously, and we're constantly working on trying to learn and trying to improve. And that is something that we'll continue to do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Stahl. I'm your Chief of Police. We're in a different world right now. I've spent 32 years in this profession, and part of my profession included being on a special weapons and tactics team. Even before Columbine happened, we predicted that that would happen in my former jurisdiction, and we trained for that incident to happen. When you do these things and you try to predict what people are going to do, bad people change their tactics. So we have to stay on the cutting edge of the newest things that people are doing and the newest intelligence that's out there all the time. I'm not surrounded by officers because I'm afraid of anybody in here. I'm surrounded by officers because I want to introduce your school resource officers, Officer Jeff Procrant, Christina Pantoja, and Chris Evans. They are extremely active, visible, and caring for the schools they serve. The unfortunate thing is there's 13 schools in this city. And if you look at 2,150 students, that's a small city where I come from. That's bigger than the city that I'm from. So these are small cities where kids are interacting and trying to figure out who they are, what they want to be when they grow up, and there's a lot of confusion going on with these kids. You will find out that communication will be a constant theme throughout our discussion today. Part of what I wanted to communicate with you right up front is the 2 commanders in the back, Mike Campbell and James Hughes. Mike Campbell just recently went through the most recent adaptation, or the recent version, let's use the simple word, the most recent version of active shooter training. He's a train the trainer, and he can go around and train the rest of our officers and other personnel on how to do so. It's important that we stay on top of this. As the mayor said, there is nothing in this box that is going to stay in the box. People change, people adapt, and we have to try to stay on top of that. Communication is absolutely key in all of this. Everybody I see out there has one of these going right now. How many of you are members of the Maricopa Police Department app? Not enough. We just introduced a new version today. The new version actually has links to each and every school in our city. You can sign up for the school in which your student is in. And your student can sign up for that as well, and teachers, you can all sign up for it. All of you people can sign up for it. It will be a live feed should anything happen to the Maricopa Police Dispatch, who will live feed that information to our first responding officers so that we know exactly, or within reason, what we're coming into, where to go first, things like that. The kids are in it, and hopefully they'll be running away to safety. But for us running towards it, we need to know the best way and the quickest way to get there and stop the bad action. Or as you're hearing on television now, stop the killing. That is our priority. So if you're not on the app, get on the app. You can go on our Facebook site and go on the app there. You can go on the website, get on the app there. You can go to your app store and get on the app there. There's plenty of avenues to get on the app. If you're not on it, you should be, and your students should be. And you should preach this to everyone. Those of you watching at home, please get on the app. Make sure that you're signed up so that if that bad action happens, we have real live information to stop the killing as quickly as possible. But for those who want to tell us about a troubled student, a troubled friend, this is also an app where you can remain confidential and tell us about information so that we can investigate it. Our job should be, all of us in here should be, prevent it before it happens. We have to communicate to do that. If we just stay in our little house and think that we're fine in our house and everybody else needs to fend for themselves, that's not prevention. Our job is prevention as a community. Thank you for your time and thank you for showing up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brady Leffler. I'm your fire chief. And our mission is to prepare and respond and mitigate emergencies, all emergencies. We accomplish that through cooperation with the police department, the remaining city departments, MUSD, and the citizens. When we also do that through prevention. We have a very strong prevention department, and those gentlemen come around and make sure your sprinklers are working and your doors are clear and those type of things. When an event like happened in Florida happens, if it happened here, our response is to coordinate with the police department and risk a lot to save lives. And basically, if we get injured, because we are typically handling the medical aspect of the incident, we can't help you. So we rely on the police department to get us in a safe as possible position to do our job. We are working with them to look at ballistic protection and things like that to get us into probably not the line of fire, but closer than we currently are. We train and train and train. We send all of our people to live shooter training. We coordinate with PD. We have done a tabletop with the school system. And it is probably our top priority and our worst fear, honestly. So we are here to answer your questions. Thank you.
So, go ahead. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items. I wanted to introduce Linda Lyon is here from the State Board of Education. Thank you very much. I want to give her a round of applause for being here. Also wanted to thank, we have the MUSD School Board, which is here, some of them over here, so Patty and Josh. We have the chairman of the Auction Indian community here as well. There's Robert Miguel. Your city, some members of your city council are here as well, so we'll have them stand. And there are many other folks as well. So Gary's here. I should have said hi to Gary. There's also part of the MUSD School Board, and many others. So obviously this is a point of real interest for our community. So just a quick couple of housekeeping items. We're going to invite Rusty Akers, a local pastor, to come up, and he is going to moderate kind of the exchange back and forth. He has some questions that you all have written down on those cards. We want to try and get to as many of those as possible. Panel, we're going to kind of just take them as they come. Again, ideas, we're going to write these ideas down so that we can take the next step. But I also want you to know, again, one other thing before we move on, and that is one of the things you all heard up here is you heard that each of them deal in a separate realm, didn't you? But at the same time, they all try and work together. But they all have different ways of doing it. And so, just like Chief Stahl said, communication is key. It's absolutely important, and it's probably one of the most critical aspects of being successful as a community to help prevent some of these things. And I just wanted to again, touch on, I don't want you to think at any time that we are making excuses. But the reality is that we all have to deal with one major overlying issue that we all face. And that is something that you deal with at your dinner table every night. And that is, where does the money come from? That's the underlying, overarching, absolute pillar that runs through all of these. Where does the money come from to do any of the ideas and suggestions? And the reason I bring that up to you, and I want to point out something here. I want to point out two things. Your federal representatives are not here tonight. Your state representatives are not here tonight. And don't get angry at that, because I understood that going into this, we could not have that broader discussion until we brought all these different ideas and narrowed them down some. It also doesn't help that right now the state legislature is actually in session, and so they're, at the state legislature till late at night too. But at the end of the day, we wanted to bring these ideas down so that we knew what the next steps were to take. Okay? But I also want to point out, when you're dealing with charters, while they receive state money, they have a business aspect to them. Okay? And I say that in a positive way. That's a good thing. Okay? Those of you that believe in school choice, you have that. Right? You have MUSD, which has different state laws that apply to them. Okay? They receive their money from the state, and they have to act in a very specific way. We call that public education. And there's real pros and there's some cons to it. Okay? Again, school choice, but it's an exciting thing that we have such a great school system here. All right? Then you have the police department, and the police department is the enforcement arm. Right? They go out and they say, hey, we're going to do this, and it's great to say, I've come from another city and they have lots of police officers. Guess what, folks? We are a city that is 15 years old, and if you haven't noticed, we are not as big as a lot of other cities, which means we don't derive as much tax revenue as others. And where do you think that tax revenue goes? It goes to our public safety. It goes to your roads. It goes to these things. And so there's not a big vault at City Hall laying around, where Scrooge McDuck can jump in there and swim around. It doesn't work that way. And so that money gets spent here, but when we reach the maximum of our resources, there's no more money. And so again, I want you to think about that. Think about that as you ask your questions. And think about what I told you earlier. And the same goes for fire. Think about what I told you earlier. I want you to get creative in thinking outside the box, but at the same time, you have to think about one-time funding. You have to think about ongoing funding. What good does it do for us to hire a new police officer this year, send them through the training, they get to be on the job for 3 months before the end of the year, and the money runs out? Does that serve anybody? No, it doesn't, because you need them ongoing. You need them to gain experience. They need to be there for 4 and 5 and 10 years and 15 years. But if they're only there for 3 months, that doesn't solve anything. So I want you to be thinking about, again, how do we use these ideas to move these suggestions forward? And ultimately, how do we take these ideas to the state level so that we can create what I like to term buckets of money? The state legislature in their budget basically gives cities, municipalities, school districts the ability to do certain things, whether it's the ability to tax, whether it's the ability to spend money in a given way, whether it's to protect that money so it can only be spent in one given way. So let's say transportation dollars or education dollars. They're the ones that provide us that ability. And if they don't provide us that ability, they cap it or they box you into it, then you don't have any other options. Okay? It's not one big pool of money that you can just shift money around and choose where you want the money to go this time. There are buckets of money that are dedicated, and the state legislature dictates where that can be spent. So I want you to keep that in mind. As you ask your questions, as you think about it, Think about how do we, again, define the box and then start thinking outside of it. So with that, invite up Rusty, and he's going to be our moderator for this evening. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Who's going to handle mics? Explorers, you're going to handle the mics for me? So this is how this is going to work. Destiny is going to start us off, okay? Mary Grace, I have you in number 2 right here. So if you could get Destiny a mic, who's got mics? Who's going to run mics for me? Do we have just one? You guys will need it. Yeah, right there. So go ahead and hand Mary Grace the other one. So Mary Grace, you're going to be second.
Hi, once again, my name is Destiny Warner, and I'm a senior at Maricopa High School. I've been at the Maricopa School District most of my educational career, and for the most part, I really do like it. I really do think that our teachers care about our students, and I think that safety really is a priority. But with no disrespect to our panel, I would like to mention that bullying is a problem. Bullying is a big problem, and I've dealt with it. I've been a bully, to be honest, and I think that it's something that once you go home, it still happens because we have these, you know, and it doesn't end at school. And so I think that that is something that propels people to act out in a violent manner when you're being bullied and you don't have anyone to help you because you feel like you can't reach out or you feel like no one is helping you. And sometimes I feel like our schools don't take it seriously or as seriously as it should be taken. With that being said, I do have a few suggestions as to how we can make our schools safer, make our community safer. And the first one is that I think we should hire psychologists in our schools. I think we should have a psychologist at our school because not all students have access to mental health help outside of school, whether they don't have the insurance or their family doesn't care. That sounds rude, but you know, I'm sorry. But you know, there was a time in my life where I felt like I needed to talk to a specialist, and I wasn't granted that help. I was told that my school psychologist was meant for special needs only, and that I was not able to speak to her. So I think that there are kids who don't have the help, and they should be allowed to have that help at school. Because I know for a fact that so many kids could benefit from having that help, having someone to talk to and direct them in a positive way so that they don't act out violently. My second suggestion is that while I do love our officer, I don't think that one is enough. I think that we should try to find the funding to instead hire more police officers, whether they're retired or active, even correctional officers, and we should have them for every building that the school has. My school is big, my school has a lot of students, and it's spread out. And one officer is just not enough if there was somebody on campus who wanted to go out and just hurt somebody. If there was an active shooter on campus, I'm concerned that my campus officer would be hurt and nobody else would be there, and we'd have to endure all of this madness until our police department came, you know? And I feel like it's a big school, and once you go on lockdown, what if this officer can't get to the other side of the school where the shooter is? I worry about that. So my next suggestion, where did it go? Put in a special protocol for our schools and make it a priority to have monthly active shooter drills. I think that lockdowns and fire drills are great while we don't do them every month on time, to be honest. I think that we need to have a specific protocol for active shooters. And I think that we need to practice it monthly. I think it's important. I don't think that lockdowns are enough to help people during an active shooter situation. It's more of a things going on around the school type of thing for lockdowns. And our school has a lot of lockdowns. So I think that monthly active shooter drills would be really beneficial because we need to start making student and staff safety a priority. School shootings, they're going to continue to happen. They're not going to stop. We can't take everybody's guns away, and while that's not on our level, I just wanted to point that out, and that we should take every step that we can to prevent it happening in our schools. And if it were to happen in our schools, we need to have a protocol to lower the odds of casualties. I would like to say something really quick. When I was in 8th grade and I was at Desert Winds, there was a person with a gun on campus. My principal came over the intercom, emotional, said we were going into lockdown, that it wasn't a drill. The first thing in my head was, there's somebody on campus with a gun. I was in my classroom. The door was locked. My teacher was scared. There were, in the middle school, there are classrooms that are set together, and there's a door between them so that you can go through each classroom. My teacher didn't lock that door. So when police officers came into our room, there were about 5 or 6, had big guns, where's this kid, where's this kid? And we were all crying, we didn't know, we were scared, we thought we were gonna die. And the kid was in the classroom next to me that had the door unlocked, and it was terrifying. And while the kid didn't have the right bullets for his gun and wasn't able to hurt anyone, and fortunately, we were all okay, it was really terrifying. And I can only imagine what people go through in Parkland, in just public places where people are shot and killed with guns that are not meant to be for citizens. You know, it's terrifying. And I don't want that to happen in my school district. And even though I'm leaving this year, I'm graduating, I still want to be a part of it. I still want to protect our students. I still feel really strongly about this. And I think that my main concern is definitely the psychologists. I think we should definitely have more psychologists in our schools, better protection. So, I don't know. My question, I put my phone away. My question is, what are we doing and what can we do as a community to protect and help our students and citizens, even if we don't have the funding from the state to hire psychologists and extra security in schools? How are we going to help protect not just schools, but public places as well, even if we don't have the funding? So that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Chestnut, you want to tackle that?
Thank you, Destiny. Those are good comments and well put. I think you make a good point, and that is, how can we improve, right? I mean, I gave a list of stuff that we currently have in place, and I think we all agree that we all need to do more. And even though funding is a problem, it is true that we can prioritize the resources that we do have. And I know that our governing board right now, we're in budget season. We're required by law to adopt a budget by July 15th each year, and improvements to student safety are part of that discussion. So we're in that process, and I know that that's some improvements. I'm just predicting. I don't know for certain because I don't make the final decision on this. The governing board does. I'm predicting they will make investments in school safety and security this year.
The other principals? Do you have anything?
I think you bring up some really valid concerns and some recommendations, but I think that when I think about school safety, I think about relationships. And I think it's important that students have positive relationships that are trustworthy, not only with their families, but with their teachers. And I think it's important that we understand that teachers are there to not only educate you, but to support you and to build that trustworthy relationship so that if you are going through hard times, that we direct you in the avenues that you need to get the help that you seek. And unfortunately, you are correct. We do not have the trained personnel that we need at schools in terms of more counselors, more psychologists, more law presence. So what we need to do is work together so that when we actually see something, we say something. And anything that's not normal, bring it to your leadership's attention, and that we act swiftly and we work with Maricopa PD and our local first responders to ensure that we take each and every situation serious. And so that also sends a message to our community and to our students that we value them, we value their words, and we're going to listen and respect them and act on them. So thank you.
Chief Stahl? Yep.
Destiny, thank you for the question. Thank you for all your suggestions, and they were very thoughtful, very well thought out. I'm going to go back to communication. I'm going to go back to a couple different things revolving communication. One is, I believe we're forward-thinking as a police department. This is the first police department that I'm aware of in the country that's using their app in this fashion to get real-time information. And we're pretty proud of that. We immediately after Florida, we thought, what can we do to make sure responders are able to talk to students and students able to talk to parents, things like that very quickly to make sure communication, at least that loop is somewhat closed or somewhat confined. Because these types of situations, a lockdown is not the proper action. It's not. Everybody needs to get out. In these types of situations, lockdown is not the appropriate action. It is leave and get out. Now, what does that leave at Maricopa High School? 2,100 kids running all over the place. So we call that organized chaos or disorganized chaos, however you want to call it. But it's going to be chaotic. And we have to have a tool, a mechanism to be able to talk to the police department so that we can round you up and reunite you with your parents who are worried about you. That is on top of the initial bad act. The unknowing for the parent has got to be equally bad. So we want to close that communication. The other thing that I really want to emphasize to everyone here is the term see something, say something is one, abused, two, taken for granted. The most important part of prevention is making sure the appropriate leaders, whether they're school leaders, whether they're law enforcement leaders, whether they're psychologists, whatever they are, that they know that this youth is going through a troubled time. Friends help friends through tough times. They don't hide the information for hope that they're not called a snitch later on or things like that. Friends help friends. If your friends are going through a difficult time, there are leaders in this community who want to reach out and help your friends. The Maricopa Police Department started very recently a program called Bloom 365. While it's revolved around, and we received a grant to do it, and we have both educational leaders, police leaders, and teens teaching these or facilitating these courses. While it is revolved around teen dating violence and some of the inappropriate behaviors, teaching them appropriate behaviors in dating, the studies show and have shown that when these bad acts, these really bad acts occur, it is because of a nasty breakup. They're not able to handle loss, whether it's a death, whether it's a loss of boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. And those are those troubled trigger points. It doesn't just happen, snap your fingers, and this is a build-up thing. And if you're afraid as a teenager to help your friend and communicate that information out, then we're not preventing the possible problem from happening, which should be our ultimate goal. We don't want to create a stigma for anybody that gets reported to the police department. Our job is to thoroughly investigate and to try to intercede if we find the threats are either invalid or we can deal with them without criminal charges. That's our goal, is to try to get that person some help so that they don't carry out the act that they've been planning. But if we don't know about it, we can't intercede. And we want to be able to intercede. We had last week, after Florida, we had 5 incidents reported during the week of threats of school violence in several of these schools. Not just one school, several of them. And we took them so seriously, we went to the parents' homes and talked to the parents about this. One of the children was 8 years old. But we talked to the parents and let them know that we're taking these things seriously. And do you have any weapons in the house that this young adult, young person, may want to carry or have the ability to carry out the act that they say they're going to do? Now, there are Fourth Amendment, we're talking about Second Amendment, there are Fourth Amendment rights for people for privacy and their First Amendment right for free speech, and we know about all those rights. But at the same time, if the parents don't want to help us, then it's our job to put the parents on notice. You have to find a way to lock these guns up. You have to find a way to keep them out of the hands of this young person who has made these threats, because now it is on you. We have offered the opportunity to take the guns away and put them in our property room for safekeeping. They're not evidence. A crime hasn't been committed yet. So we're keeping them for safekeeping until the parent can handle whatever it is that they need to handle with their child, their student, whatever it may be. And then We'll give them back when you feel it's appropriate. But if you don't want to, that's your right as well. That's the Second Amendment. That's your right. But understand there are consequences with those rights. And that's how seriously we took all 5 of those incidents. And it is extremely time-consuming. From the time of the threat to the time of the adjudication of the case was 3 hours that you have several officers dedicated to that particular case. I only have 6 on the street at a time. So half of your officers are out there investigating that. That's how many resources are being chewed up on these things. Thank you, Destiny.
Destiny, one thing I wanted to mention is that while as a small charter school we do not have an SRO on campus, we have such a strong working relationship with a Maricopa PD that at a drop of a hat we can make a phone call. And Officer Pantoja has been on campus. They're here to assist our students. We are fortunate enough to have a psychologist on campus, and that does make a difference for these students that are struggling at home and can't confide in a parent or are uncomfortable with a situation happening at school. It does make a difference. But it says a lot about how close-knit we are as a community that we can pick up the phone and know that we have the support in an instant to help the students out.
Thank you, guys. Mary Grace, I'm going to give you your card.
Yeah.
If you're turning in a card, if people are still doing that, make sure you put your name on it, so we can call you and get you to question. Do we have another microphone? Do we have another one? So Ed, you're going to be next. Okay.
First, I just wanted to say, Destiny, thank you. We need to give more opportunities for our youth to speak. Your voice does.
Can't hear you. Put it right on your chin. There you go.
First, I wanted to say thank you to Destiny for speaking. We need to give more opportunities for our youth to speak. Your voice matters. The youth voice matters, and you guys can make a difference. So please, speak up. I'm Mary Grace. I'm a mom of 3. I have one at ASU, one a junior at Maricopa High School, and one in 8th grade at Maricopa Wells. My concern was more along the lines of social media. It can be good, it can be bad. In an emergency situation, or even non-emergency situation like a teaching lockdown, how do we address the issue of social media beating the bell and making the announcement before any facts have been put out? Starting a domino effect of rumors, panicked parents who will flood the schools with calls, panicked parents who will start texting their students. If it isn't a real situation, those text bells going off are alerting that person where people are. Parents will even call MPD or the fire department and flood that situation, or just literally show up to the schools. How do we deal with that? What can be done in this day and age to take away from that situation, probably causing more issues?
I'm guessing you're asking me.
Everybody.
Let me put out firstly, if the message didn't come from the police department, it's not valid yet. And we try very hard to get the information out as quickly as possible. But to get the information out means we have to do an investigation first to get to the facts of the case. We can't just put out information that, hey, there's an allegation of an active shooter, or there's an allegation of a threat of violence at XYZ school, because that will terrorize the neighborhood. And that is really what a lot of these people want, too, is attention. Or they want a reaction to develop their plan, to formulate their plan, because these things they don't just happen at the snap of a finger. These are planned out. They're watching the reaction of the teachers, the students, the police officers, to figure out how much time do they have, so how much ammunition do I need to bring. They're thinking about all these things. So I want to put out, if it didn't come from the police department, it's not factual. Until it comes out from the police department, then it becomes factual. We try to do our best. but we also try not to glamorize these people who make these threats. There are a lot of times we're not going to tell you what's going on because the media hasn't yet found out, so we're trying to keep it quiet. And we don't want to glamorize these bad behaviors. If there's some validity to it, we definitely try to notify you, and we work with all the schools on what's the appropriate message to put out. Our public information officer works with their public information officer to make sure the message is consistent and we're all on board at the same time. I hope that answered your question, Mary.
I'll take a shot at it. I like to believe, this is on, right? I'd like to believe that those closest to the problem have the best solutions, and those are our students. And so I would challenge this panel here tonight to mobilize our student leaders at each and every one of the schools to listen to them, to bring them to a task force, to bring them to a panel to sit up here before you, and let's listen to their suggestions. Let's listen to what they know, because they're closest to the problems. They're going to offer the best solutions, and they're going to be able to enlighten us to what's really happening at real time during our schools. We think we know what's happening. We think we have an idea of how we can solve that, and we have plenty plans in place to be able to support that. But that's being reactive when we get to that level. I want to be proactive, and therefore I'd like to challenge not only myself, but each one of us up here to mobilize our student leaders in each one of our schools and bring them to the table to give us suggestions moving forward.
I'm on your side. My problem was more along the lines with the community, the fear factor, maybe little Johnny or little Jill are snapping, oh, we're going in a lockdown, and parents see that and immediately go to social media, there's lockdown at MHS, and oh, there's a lockdown at... How do we deal with that? Because to me as a mom, I'm concerned that that interference is going to interfere with the schools. I know the schools are doing their job. I know the police are doing their job. But how do we break down that? Is it a mistrust of the community that, you know, they're relying on social media first before they're relying on the Connect Ed message? Or I know you guys need to do your job, and I trust that you guys, including the schools, are going to do your job first and then get the message out. But your priority is always safety first. I know that. But how do we deal with the panic that's going, you know, the rumors? To me, that interferes with your job. And I don't want that interference adding to any more delays. I don't know if
It's a great question. I absolutely agree with you. It's probably the most frustrating part of my PIO's job, because we get all of those rumors, and he's very hesitant to put anything out because we don't factually know whether there's validity to it, not, or whether there is. So it takes that investigation. I would encourage those students to use our app rather than Snapchat, which is extremely hackable by anyone. Use our app so that they can communicate that with us, and we can get that real-time information to any of the parents and or the school district.
If I can just suggest, why don't you take both of your ideas, put them together, mobilize a group of student leaders from all the schools, get them together with you to be tutored on the Maricopa Police Department app, and get them to socialize it amongst their peers. Because that's the one, somebody said it, it's up to the students. They've got to be using the app for the app to do any good. So your idea is great. Get them together, get the leaders together who can socialize the app out to as many as possible. Do the same for parents.
Okay, we're not going to beat this horse any longer. Social media is I love social media. If you have Facebook, you've seen me on social media. We have to train kids, we have to train ourselves, we have to be more responsible with social media. We're not going to solve the social media problem. I don't know how we're going to solve it. We have a president who has a social media problem. So I don't know if we're going to really fix that tonight, so we're just going to move on. Ed, you're next. Dr. K, where's Dr. K?
Right here.
Oh, Dr. K is going to be next. Here's your question, if you want it.
I'm Ed Stotler. I live here in Maricopa and Rancho El Dorado. I speak from past law enforcement experience. I'm a retired sheriff's deputy out of Collier County, Florida. This that just happened in Florida is unspeakable. But my question is there any plans at this point to put SRO officers in every school? We had them in every school in Collier County. They were a big benefit to the school. They were a big benefit to the department. When the school is adjourned for any breaks and during summer, those SRO officers were put on the street to augment the patrol. And in those patrols, if there was juvenile situations that come up, those SRO officers were the ones that were called to deal with that because they knew the students better than a regular patrol officer. They were involved with them at school. So it benefited in both aspects. So all of the costs, I don't think, would go directly to the school. Sure, there's going to be some costs go there, but it's going to augment the department in itself. My experience with being employed with MUSD, I knew of some changes that could be made and probably should be made. Using the single point of entry, for instance, when I was there, and it was 5 years ago, maybe you've changed that policy, I don't know, but people were allowed to come in through the multi-purpose room for breakfast, at lunchtime. Wasn't coming through the front office. They were coming through the multi-purpose room. Those need to be locked and secured all day. The gates around the school, of course, were secured. But people walking in, you don't know what's going to happen with that. I never felt comfortable letting anybody in. But our instructions were to unlock the multi-purpose room at 7:30 in the morning and let the students come in for breakfast. So maybe that change has been made, I don't know. And I think there's an added security that could be put on to all the doors that you have in these schools. There is a lockdown door barricade device that can be put on it. And I know, Chief, you don't like the idea of barricading a door and locking it down, but in some cases you're going to have to do that. And they make devices out there that, like in this instance, it's a three-piece device. One mounts to the floor, one mounts to the door, and there's a slide-in hook that slides through and locks into the floor. It's not breachable. You can't pry the door open. You can't hammer it with 21 blows of a sledgehammer. It's demonstrated on the film. Law enforcement backs it, and it's something I think maybe it should be done. The doors can be breached as they are, just the latches. So in securing the bottom of that door, they're not going to get in. And they're not going to take the time to get in. If you got somebody in there that's shooting up the school, they're not going to try to pry the doors open and do all of that. That's not really not feasible for them. And I am not for arming teachers with firearms in the schools. They have enough responsibility educating our kids that they don't need to be harnessed with the responsibility of carrying a firearm or having a firearm accessible to them in a schoolroom. That's just too much. Having it in law enforcement is enough stress without being a teacher and having to deal with that too. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your first name.
Ed.
Yeah. Ed, thank you for your service. Greatly appreciate it. I'll go with the first one. I'll echo what the mayor said. It's costly to put SROs in every school. So what we've done, and please remember this, right now the SROs are funded by the city of Maricopa, the police department. We do, because we can have them go, I know Christina and Jeff and Scott, or Chris, go to several schools just to check in. Even though They're not on our payroll or anything like that. We want to check in and see how things are going. And that's how we've developed really good relationships with Sequoia and with Leading Edge and some of the others. I mean, that's our responsibility, I feel. Yeah, I do the same thing. These school resource officers during the summer, they work with juvenile probation to go out and visit with the youth that the school districts have agreed to, or kind of need a little extra attention during the summer. And fortunately, a lot of them leave the city and go visit other parents somewhere else. But those that are around, we let them know we care, check in on them every now and again, same during Christmas break and all the other breaks. So yes, they are very valuable, even not during the school year, because they are checking on your youth. They are checking on your teenagers and your young people to make sure that everything's going okay during the summer, because you know what idle hands do. As far as your breaching thing, I've seen it several times. I'm not saying I'm against it. What I'm saying is your first rule should be run. That is the ultimate. Get out, get out, get out. If you have no other recourse, those are great tools. They are. They're backed by law enforcement nationwide. The rest of the questions, I think, were for, if I'm not mistaken, for the superintendent.
Yeah, we have been looking at door locks. Our goal will be to have every classroom door be able to be locked from the inside. We have a number of classrooms that can do that, but not all. And we're currently researching costs on that. So that could be an improvement. The other thing, single entry, we're doing better at that at Maricopa High School. We have changed our procedures over the last 5 years. And we've made improvements to the front entry, which during the day, that's the only way to get in. We're doing a better job of when we do open gates, extra gates in the morning to allow students to come in, that security is at those gates. So we've made improvements there and continuing to evaluate that.
Charter schools, you guys have single point of entry?
We too have changed our point of entry to make it a single entry with the recommendation of my principal who's hiding in the back there, Rachel Lay. I too believe that SRO should be in each and every school for the very purpose of providing not only a law enforcement presence, but because they also build relationships with our students and they're able to obtain information that's vital to once again being proactive. So thank you for those suggestions. And when you talk about securing doors and things like that, for us it comes back to funding, and that's a big issue for us, and oftentimes it's an issue that we can't overcome as a charter.
At Legacy, we do have a single entry during the course of the school day. The morning time, we do have the gates open and are open to flag. They're open to parents to join us for flag. We have staff at the gates positioned so we know who's coming. And that's the same at dismissal. Parents are issued a sign to pick up their students, and they're not allowed on campus without the proper identification. We are upgrading our security systems to include keypads, so we know for kids that that participate in our before or after school program that the parents have to enter a code, and we know who is coming on campus and picking up their child and who's leaving at that time.
Those are good. Thanks, Ed. Dr. K. And then Brianna Barnes. You want to raise your hand, Brianna? She's back there. She'll be next. I'll give you your card back.
Hi, my name's Karen Kamarchek. I have 3 children at MUSD, and my question has to do with security cameras, and specifically, can the police department log in to the security cameras and see remotely what's happening at the schools?
The answer to that is currently no, but we're working on it. We discussed that at our last meeting. Thank you for the question.
Dr. Chestnut? Same answer? Okay. So they're working on it. Is it good? Brianna? Do you need your card? Do you remember what you said?
Yeah.
I'll give it back to you anyways.
I have like
Notes. Oh, yeah, there's one.
Okay, so first, as a student, I mean, I don't think that our school is safe, and I don't feel safe going there much anymore. I have very high respect for our security guards, and I have a lot of respect for our SRO, and I have a lot of respect for our administration and our staff. But I don't think that just hiring counselors and psychologists is going to do the trick. While I do highly respect your suggestion there, I feel that our administration and our staff needs to be more interactive with the students than they are now. Like during lunches, they come out and they stand in front of the 200 building in the office and they watch us at lunch. And it's like when we see them, we see like a force. They're just watching us, they're just monitoring us, they're just keeping an eye on us. They're not interacting with us, they're not wanting to know what we're feeling that day, they don't want to know how we're doing that day. They're not seeing what our students are actually feeling like that day, and if they feel safe being at lunch, or if they are getting bullied, or if they aren't getting bullied, they have no idea because they don't interact with the students like they should. Also, I want to address our drills. We have terrible drills, with all due respect. And our lockdown drills, we all huddle into a corner and nobody takes them seriously. They play on their phones, no matter how much the teacher says, put them away, stop talking. People sit there, they talk, they take Snapchat videos, they post them. They're sitting there laughing and tickling each other, and couples are making out, and it's ridiculous because the teacher just sits there at their desk and they don't say a word about it, because they don't know what else to do. They're just sitting there playing on their computer. If somebody were to come in that door and somebody were to have an automatic rifle of some sort, it would be so easy to take us all out. And I also think that we have so many students, and we have 6 people that are there to secure our school. That's not enough, because we have them generally in pairs. They all are on their security cards in pairs. We have, 5 entrances to come into the school every day. And people always come in groups. Anybody could walk through that gate. Anybody. I know recently, I think in December, somebody actually walked through the gate, walked into my English class, and just started yelling. They were trying to find somebody. They did not attend the school. We didn't know who they were. They just started yelling. This guy was angry. I don't know if he was armed. I don't know if he had anything on him, but who knows what he would have done if security hadn't gotten there. But it took a while for security to get there. And that's not their fault entirely, because there's only 5 of them. And one, he actually doesn't even get there until halfway through the day anyway. So technically there's 4. And then we have our SRO, who is consistently busy. He has plenty of students that he needs to take care of during the day, and he doesn't have any help. It's just him. And so I think we need to focus on getting more funds into that, whether we do city fundraisers. I mean, honestly, we could do anything and everything. We could try all possibilities, and if it doesn't work, we try something else. Our students don't feel safe at all. There was a student who actually was being bullied for weeks and weeks, and he didn't go to anybody because he knew the staff wouldn't do anything about it. And that is tragic, because I have been bullied. I have gone through many, many things, and I felt comfortable talking to a teacher because she was interactive with me. She actually talked to me when she knew I was feeling down. She noticed when I was feeling down because I wasn't talking. And for anybody who knows me, I'm a very outgoing person. I love to talk. I love to be interactive with everybody. But she noticed, and she came up to me and she asked me, "What's wrong?" And that's the kind of attention we need from our staff. That's the kind of attention we need from our security, which they actually are pretty good about it. And that's the kind of attention we need from the SRO as well. Like I said, I highly respect all of our staff, administration, our security guards, and our SRO, but I think we need more interaction. We need better drills. We are always very vulnerable during our drills. When we had a bomb threat last year, we all ended up at the football field and the baseball field. Anybody who actually had a bomb on that campus could have easily taken us all out. And that is wow. Our second bomb threat, we all ended up at Desert Winds, where there was middle schoolers and high schoolers. Everybody was there. That would have been super easy as well. And so I think we need to have better drills, and we need to start working with our police and fire department. In an email sent out February 15th, that was actually said to our parents that we work closely with the police and fire departments to ensure the safety of all of our students, and I don't believe that's true. I've seen the police and fire department on the campus one time to do a prom DUI demonstration. And that is the most interaction that our students as a whole have had with any sort of department to ensure our safety. And if they can make time out of their day to do the prom demonstration, they can take time out of their day to make sure we're ready for an intruder.
Brianna, thank you for your comments. I think those are valid concerns, and I'm taking good notes. We'll be glad to pass those along. These are the kinds of things we're working on. I have never claimed that we have a perfect security situation in any of our schools, and we're always willing to learn and improve, and I think your suggestions from a student point of view are excellent, so thank you.
Yeah, very good. Margaret Jackson. And then next up is going to be Christina Jones. Christina Jones? Oh, right here, okay.
Hi, I'm a parent and a teacher. I am concerned about what's being put on the table to strengthen families and community, the communication, the education for families on what to do. I think a lot of the craziness that goes is because people are not prepared. They do not understand the protocols. And I think it would be very helpful if we were working on strengthening families, educating the families, dealing with the lack of mental illness support, and dealing, I too agree at the high school level, well, it's probably going everywhere, and as an elementary teacher, I see it too. But the bullying issue is a big issue. It cannot be ignored. It cannot be tolerated in any way. And and all of these things we discuss are important. But the bottom is, we've got to find a way to strengthen family and community relationships so we're all on the same page. If we do that, we will do more for this community than any of the other fixes or Band-Aids that we can put on it. And I just think it needs to be addressed. And I will say one more thing about that. I used to be the volunteer coordinator for this district. And I had families with troubled kids, parents, come, and I was putting them through a course, James Lehman Total Transformation course that the district had bought. And those parents took that 12-week course and came back and thanked me over and over again for the time that they did, because they didn't know how to deal with their angry child or whatever. And I think more of that can be done. I know the district has at least one copy of that because I used it when I had that position. And I think we can do more of that. Parents want to help their kids. They want to do good. They want to find the problems out. They want to intercede before anything happens. But oftentimes they do not know how. And we need to, if there's any way we can help with this, we need to put that on the table and figure out a way.
You didn't have a question specifically?
No.
Okay.
I just am putting in a word.
Okay, that's good. All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Jones. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. A little tired from work. But I felt that it was very important to be here tonight to share a personal experience that I have recently experienced with my child. I am a mother of two. I have my son, he is 12. He attends Maricopa Junior High, as well as a daughter who's in Maricopa Elementary. We are new to Maricopa. We're from California, from the Bay Area. What really attracted and drew us to Maricopa is because it's like a small California, because it's like a melting pot of everything. It's very diverse. It's what I'm used to from California. Some things that I've experienced as a mother that no parent should have to experience is when your child is a victim of bullying. And what is concerning to me is that I would like to know what policies are in place for zero tolerance for bullying. And I don't think some people don't take that serious, because a situation where my child recently experienced, which made me overreacted just enough when my child came home crying about a rumor that was spread throughout the school. It was a false allegation, and it tore my child up. That rumor could have been catastrophic for up to 5 students. Could have ended with serious depression. I will share this with you guys because if it affects me, I hope it can touch someone in here. My baby wanted to harm himself, only at 12 years old, because he did not know how to, at that time, to deal with the pressure of a rumor that just ate at him at that time. And that was just recently. This was just last week. It affected me so much, I could not focus on my work. As a single parent, I am a nurse. I work for Sun Life Family Health Center, which I'm very proud to say I work for. I serve our community. Here's my boss, my coworkers. And I have to take a step back from work. My last day is tomorrow, to make sure that my babies are going to be okay. Are they going to be safe while I'm at work to provide for my family? Are they going to, is there someone there at the school to ensure that my kids are going to be okay? If there's a bullying, if someone is saying, hey, this person is bothering me, is that child going to be held responsible and accountable for their actions? Because what happens is, if we don't reach out to our children and teach them, hey, you got good consequences, you got bad consequences in life. But we all have to be accountable of our actions. It starts at home, and then we hope our kids go to school and they do the right thing. Then we also are leaving them with officials that hopefully they're also enforcing those rules as well, and holding those accountable that are bullying kids who don't know. Some are strong enough to withstand it, some are not. But we need to make sure that as a community, we are coming together to make sure that we can prevent something that could be so catastrophic. It takes a village to raise these kids, and I really am trying to have hope in Maricopa that we can do that. And thank you.
Do you want to talk about bullying in the schools? What kind of tolerance we have for bullying?
Sure. Bullying is a problem in American culture. It's a problem in schools, and it's a big challenge for us in Maricopa Unified School District. And middle school is probably the level where it happens the most, but it certainly happens in our high school, and it happens in our elementary schools as well. And we take it very seriously. It's part of our disciplinary consequences, and our staff works hard to prevent it. Our staff works hard to intervene when there is bullying and then resolve those issues. And we have a step of disciplinary consequences that we follow if students participate in bullying behavior. And I can tell you that the principals take it very seriously. And it breaks my heart when I hear that students don't report it to someone, because we can't act on something that we don't know about. And that's where we rely on parents to keep us informed, the students to keep us informed. Teachers are often on the front line with that. They'll be the first to see it and intervene. And we work hard to address every single bullying situation. We don't look the other way on those things. And it's a constant challenge, and I wish it wasn't the case, but it is one of the biggest challenges we face in the area of student discipline.
Charter schools?
I believe that we have a zero tolerance for bullying, first off and foremost. I also think that as a leader, leadership's about relationships, and we get back to what the students have brought up earlier tonight. It's important, it's critical that we have those relationships with our students so that we can communicate with them. But also, when you think about bullying or any act of violence, it's also opportunity to meet with the child who is the bullier, to get to know, why are you bullying, what is going on. And so it's a two-way situation where you have the opportunity
to actually meet with both students and get to the root cause to make sure that you're assisting both students, because both students are equally as important. But I know from my perspective, we have a zero tolerance for bullying. And I appreciate your passion and your question tonight, because it is a big problem. It's a problem as leaders that we're going to focus on. But once again, I get back to those that have the best solutions are those close to the problems, and there are students. And we need to start to mobilize them to bring them into a leadership capacity and use their leadership at school to inform us what we can do better.
As a leader, I would agree that communication is the first issue and building those relationships. If you, as a leader, do not have that relationship with the students, they're not comfortable to come tell you that something's happening or that they are feeling bullied. So it's important that we are building those relationships. We, too, have a zero tolerance for bullying. We investigate any claim that is brought to our attention, and we follow a discipline matrix as well. But it comes down to, just like this gentleman said, is that we have to address it from both sides. There's normally an underlying cause of why someone is picking on another student, and it's important that we support both of those students.
Thank you. Eric Gillies. Eric, right here. And then Dylan Hill. Dylan in the room? Oh, right here. Is it Dylan? Am I right? Okay, she'll be next then.
So my question is a little bit of a follow-up to something that the chief had discussed a little bit earlier about Second and Fourth Amendments. So Arizona state law prohibits the possession of firearms by anyone on probation or based on a court order to determine the mental health of the person. Can the courts place youth and adults on probation if they make threats against a school, such as a school shooting? Or can there be a court-ordered mental evaluation placed on them, which would then, can the Maricopa Police Department then legally remove the guns from the house?
Excellent question. You're cheating sitting next to her. I just want you to know that. To answer your question, yes, but it has to be adjudicated by the courts. The courts have to adjudicate somebody in violation of the law to make them a prohibited possessor, whether it's a serious enough crime that occurred, which school threats can or sometimes do and sometimes don't. It depends on the prosecutorial aspect and the judicial aspect. So if it's high enough, yes, they can take it away. The mental health part of it, to have an involuntary committal, usually takes the help of a reporter. Somebody reports to the police department that this person is either a harm to themselves, imminent harm to themselves, or an imminent harm to someone else. And if the law enforcement gets involved, then we can involuntarily commit them. To be adjudicated by a court, the only way we can take weapons away from anyone is if they're adjudicated by the court to do so. We're kind of lucky to be in the state of Arizona. If you listen to the national conversation, it talks about fixed NICS and all those other things. We have a pretty substantial NICS program in the state of Arizona. Yes, there are loopholes, and there probably always will be. But if it's adjudicated by a court, it is immediately electronically sent to all law enforcement agencies, all gun dealers, FFL registered gun dealers, so that they cannot either purchase one or have one. Then comes the point of, do we go to the home and take them away, things like that. But last year, the most recent statistic, last year there were 384,000 checks in the NICS system just from Arizona. And 5,200 denials for weapons in the NICS system in the state of Arizona. So to answer your question, yes, but it's going to take a lot of work for people to report them and not be afraid to report them so that at least for that temporary time period, they can have those weapons taken away. The good thing about our NICS system in the state of Arizona is that the court can also adjudicate to give the weapons back once they're satisfied of the mental well-being so that they're no longer a threat to themselves or others. And it's just as instantaneous to law enforcement to give the guns back and or get that privilege to buy weapons back once again. But the court system we do it electronically in Arizona, and it's pretty vibrant right now.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan? And then Gary Miller is going to be next.
Hello, everyone. I'm a student at Maricopa High School. My name is Dylan Hill, and I just wanted to talk about the idea of having armed guards or allowing faculty to carry a concealed firearm. So to protect students in the schools, I think that the addition of an SRO or allowing faculty to be able to carry a concealed firearm is integral, because if there was an active threat on campus, the first line of defense closest to the students is the teachers. And while I understand that not everyone wants the responsibility of protecting other people's lives, I do think that it needs to be an option. So if we don't want to have allowing teachers to be armed, then at least we need to offer the training to our current security guards. So in regards to arming faculty, I think that it would be a good idea to offer them a bonus incentive of around maybe $1,000. And that way it can help pay for the training that they would need to receive, as well as helping fund purchasing the firearm. So I don't really mind if there's regulation on what type of firearm they can use, or even having to qualify on the range, but I do think that this way students can be more protected, and I think students would feel more safe if they knew that in a situation like a shooting, their teacher was armed. That way teachers wouldn't have just the choice of sacrificing themselves for the students. So I would like to touch on the fact that police won't always be able to get there in time. This is the same reason why people conceal carry firearms on a daily basis. And I do think that even if 5 teachers took on that responsibility within a school, you can strategically pace them throughout the campus. But this way, it would give students a better chance of survival, and it would make them feel more safe. And even with the recent tragedy in Florida, the police officers were not able to respond in time. The shooter stopped. They were ordered to stand down. Okay, so I think that if we were able to have that opportunity, even for a place like Maricopa, that would greatly help protect students. So my question is, has there been any thought to having armed security guards, and if that's too expensive, allowing teachers who have chosen to take on that responsibility carry a concealed firearm, and is this a possibility in our district?
Dr. Chestnut, you need to address, first of all, there's laws in place.
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I know the chief has some thoughts on this too.
Yeah, and then Chief Stahl.
Currently, it's against state law for teachers to be armed. So state law, I suppose, would have to be changed. And then, of course, there's the funding thing. You alluded to that. And I understand the suggestion. I think it's an interesting one, possibly of arming our security guards, right? We have security guards who are not police officers. We have 5 of them. And I suppose that could be a possibility as well. But once again, that would have to be a state law change. And actually a federal law as well. I think federal gun-free zones also apply, I believe. Is that right? Is it federal and state? Yeah.
Did you guys want to chime in or let me go? All right, we knew this question was coming. I speak from a couple different angles. First and foremost, I have a daughter who teaches at a public school system. I asked her if she wanted to carry my gun, and she responded the way I would hope she would respond. She laughed at me. She's lived around a dad who has had to train not just with other police officers, but with military branches to train appropriately to make the correct use of force decision under the correct conditions. When I was a young special weapons and tactics officer, we went through a training called close quarter battles, and it was taught by the FAST team, which is a subsection of the SEAL team. And at that time, when they taught us the course, it was a live ammunition course. And they relayed to us in the line of battle, in their course of conduct, their rules of engagement are a little bit different. And here's how they put it. If we enter a room, we yell freeze. If it moves, we shoot it. In civilian world, you can't do that. We have the responsibility to view the threat, determine whether the threat can carry out an action against us or someone else, and then respond accordingly. Now, with training, that happens fairly quickly, but it takes a lot of training. I talked with the DPS colonel today, and that topic is being brought up on Capitol Hill right now, as far as arming teachers and what it would take and if we're pro or against it. There are a lot of conditions that I believe all of us leaders in law enforcement would have to place on those. If we allowed that, there would have to be a lot of conditions. And here's why. When we train my police officers and we go through active shooter training, we shoot at them with paintball rounds, and their heart rate is about 130. Normally it's about, what, 70 or 80, Christina? You're fit, maybe 60 for you? Normal heart rate's right around 60 to 70, but when you're excited, it goes up to about 130. When you're training on a range, shooting a gun, your heart rate's about 60 or 70. Some get a little white coat disease because they're testing and qualifying. I'm looking at the expert over there. And you get a little excited, and it's a little higher, so you miss some rounds, because what happens in the human body is when you are under stress, the unit or the muscle that pumps blood pumps less blood to the extremities because it's under stress, and it's saying, you need to protect the heart. You need to protect the heart, because if the heart goes, you're done. So less blood goes to the fingertips, to the eyes, to the ears. That's why people talk about tunnel vision. I didn't hear how many shots were going off, all those other things, is because the blood didn't get to the extremities to hear, see, feel, smell, all of those things at 156 beats per minute. That's what it feels like when there's a gun pointed at you with real bullets in it. Not standing at the range, firing at a silhouette, making sure all 50 rounds are in there somewhere that doesn't move. Bad guys move. Bad guys point guns at you. Bad guys don't want to get shot either. That would be the conditions we would want to. If we accepted that, those teachers would have to train in that fashion, or security guards would have to train in that fashion for us to be able to be comfortable. Because as I scared the crap out of them the other day. I said, here's the rules of engagement in an active shooter situation. Shots are already going off. My officers are coming. We train with Ak-Chin Police Department. We train with Gila River Police Department. We train with Pinal County Sheriff's Office. We train with Casa Grande and all our surrounding agencies. And they're all coming when there's an active shooter case going on. They're all coming. So when we get there, we're hearing the rounds going, we're smelling the smoke, we're hearing the fire extinguisher, or the fire alarm, we're hearing everything going off. When we bust into a room, if you've got a gun, guess what? I'm not asking whether you're a teacher or you're a bad guy. The rules of engagement change because it's now active shooting. I don't have the responsibility as a law enforcement officer to go, are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? I'm not quite sure. Are you a good guy? And we don't take that chance for the safety of the children and the safety of us. Our job is to stop the killing. That's our job. So if you're going to be a teacher and you want to arm and go through this, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying that there needs to be some parameters put in place to make sure you understand the dangers of it before you accept that huge responsibility of having such a tool in your hands with young people around. It is a tool in the hands of a trained person. It is a weapon in the hands of a wrong person. It's a great question. It took a lot of guts to ask that question.
Thanks, Chief. Dr. Gary Miller, and then Delilah Dunn. Where's Delilah? Right here? Can you get Delilah a mic right here?
Hello. I wear multiple hats, so I'm up here now as a political scientist, a social worker, and a psychologist, kind of all wrapped in one. So I strongly believe that there are many angles to the problem, as many people have kind of commented on, and I believe it will require multiple solutions to the problem. And I believe that I live in the best community in the world, and I believe everybody being here is testimony to the culture that we are building here, the good culture, in which I believe that necessarily this is not a gun problem, but this is more of a cultural problem. And I believe that there are many issues to address with our cultural problem, which means that it starts at home. I believe it's more of a bottom-up solution versus a top-down. Although there are definitely solutions that will need to come from the top down, but I definitely think that it starts in the home. You know, for me personally, I think it's important to be sitting at the table, talking to your children, unplug from the digital media and everything that's we're being distracted by. And I think that right now there's a lot of desensitization that's going on, and so I can talk on this, but I'm just going to ask a question that will be more rhetorical, because I don't mean to be a Mr. Smarty Pants, but I think the question that I ask, I don't know if it'll be something that you will necessarily be able to answer, but I just want to more or less plant the seeds that I believe what my question is really encompasses solutions across the systems. So my question is that, you know, as the healthcare paradigm shifts from focusing on quantity of life to focus on improving quality of life, is there a systematic approach to build a model to improve methods to reduce harm across the boards? And the Latin call that a premium non nocere. So is there a model that can be used across multiple systems, city, schools, community, that can be utilized in order to measure and improve the systems? That's a simple approach in order to reduce harm. So if you can answer that, I'd be, you know, astounded, but...
And you're talking about the mental health system?
Well, no, it's just, quality of life. Because now city government's focused on quality of life. You're focused on quality of life. Schools focus on quality of life. Healthcare is focused on quality of life. But measuring that to improve that in order to reduce harm. Because really that's what it's about, is reducing harm. How can we reduce harm across the system and have it measurable outcomes to improve the systems?
Thanks, Gary. I think I'll take that one. Not because I have the answer. I think the reality here is that the short answer is no. There is not a simple solution. There is not a simple model. If there was a simple model, that would have been done already, right? I don't think we'd be having this discussion here tonight. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we have to play in. You know, we're sitting in a country right now that 250 some odd years ago didn't exist and had never been seen in the history of the world before. Ever. Now, our founding fathers weren't perfect. They didn't do everything right? And over the 250 years, we've evolved a lot. and we've continued to learn, but we put in place a document that allowed us to be flexible and change where change was needed. And I think that that's what we're trying to do here even tonight on a more, much more micro level, is that we're taking this big problem and we're boiling it down to something small. And so, to your question, Gary, how do we help the quality of life here locally? Well, we start by having these conversations, and then we look around and we see what others are doing, and we take their ideas and we say, that's right for Maricopa, and those ones over there, they're not so right for us. And then we share that, and then they do the same thing. So again, I wish I could sit here and say that I know everything and that I've got this all figured out and just trust me, but that would be lying to you and that would be wrong. I think that we are literally evolving through this, and I think that we are trying to find the way that best works. And there's not going to be a perfect solution. But if we look at our country, I think that we can say it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty darn good. And if I don't mean to make light of this or be too humorous, but I love what Winston Churchill once said. He said, democracy is the worst form of government on the planet, except for all the other forms. So, it's not perfect. And I think that that's our discussion here tonight is that all the other forms are terrible too. And so how do we make the very best one possible?
Gary, I'm going to try to be real simple and real short. Get involved. Everybody needs to get involved. And thank you for being here. Yeah. Those people watching online, and when you watch the video, our message, I think, from all of us leaders is get involved. Listen to the teens. We want the teens to get involved as well. Our voice, we're not necessarily the experts in the field. We're searching for the same answers you're searching for. But if people don't get involved, we're not going to fix what we need to fix. You have to get involved. And take that risk. We may not like your answer, but then we may think about it for a day and say, yeah, that was not a bad question or not a bad idea. But we won't know if you don't get involved and ask the question and be present. So that's my message for quality of life.
Thank you. Delilah, right? Delilah, and then Constable Roberts going to be next here in the back.
I think in all schools we should have peer media training, because right now only Santa Cruz has it. And if you don't know what peer mediating is, it's when like kids like 3rd through 5th grade take training of how to help stop fights and that stuff. But if it gets serious, we like talk to grown-ups so they can deal with it.
Very good.
Now, she gets involved because she comes to our let's have that talk discussion every now and again, and I see her there. And while she's doodling, she's listening.
So I don't know if you want to answer this, Dr. Chestnut, but just so the whole audience heard it, she was talking about peer media mediation, peer mediation. And so that's a great suggestion. You guys want to talk about that?
Well, it is a wonderful example of how kids can be involved and help solve a real problem on a playground. Peer mediators, it's a common thing that's been around for a long time. Not every school has it, and not every MUSD school has it, but Santa Cruz has it, right? And it is a wonderful way for kids to get involved, solving that bullying problem, those low-level problems on the playground. So thank you for being involved with that.
I echo your sentiments. Great job. Took some courage to get up there and talk about peer mediation. We as adults often need that peer mediation practice too. So thank you, young lady. You're awesome.
Thank you very much. We're going to take your suggestion and implement it at our school as well.
Constable Roberts, and then Angie Gamble. Angie's back here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Constable Roberts. I just wanted to bring up a point. I'm not sure if everybody here understands what a constable does. A major thing that we do is serve protective orders. And in the past little over 3 years that I've held the office, I tend to work with the school resource officer at times. Believe it or not, we do have protective orders that come through the courts that have to do with teenagers in high school. And shortly after taking the office, I noticed that there was an issue with serving the minors in school. And I would just suggest that rather than hinder the process, that we can continue to work with the process and work with the school resource officer and get those protective orders served in an expeditious way, because that could actually help prevent something from happening and escalating in a school. That was my comment.
Angie, go ahead.
Good evening. I want to thank everybody here tonight, and I appreciate all the comments. I thank the leadership and the school leadership for this forum. I'm fairly new to this area of Maricopa. I also came from a very small community called Page, Arizona. Because of our work issues, I transferred to the Valley, and my biggest concern is that I work in Scottsdale, so I commute every single day. So my kids go to school here. I have a high school freshman, and then I have a student at Saddleback Elementary. So when things happen with everything going on here, I'm very concerned that I'm in Scottsdale and my kids are here. What am I going to do? How am I going to get here as soon as possible? How do I know my kids are safe in school? What if nobody's home and they're sent home from school? How is that communication going to come to me? So the kids and I have our own emergency response plan at home. So I asked my older son, what is your emergency response plan at the high school? What are you being taught? And just as the high school students have expressed tonight, we just have this thing that we do where we get together and we wait for the teacher to tell us what to do next. You know, and I said, that's kind of not effective. I would like to, first of all, I would like to know how you're going to act on the suggestions and comments that were made tonight. And also, how quickly will we know what the outcome of this meeting is going to be? Are we going to have a follow-up meeting? And then another suggestion that I have is I work for a utility company. So within the utility company, we have a program called the Boosters Club. And I'm wondering, and I'm sitting here thinking, how can we find funding to get another officer, to have some kind of revenue coming in so that we can enforce some kind of safety measure? And I've done a lot of volunteer work where I came from. And I would like to sit down with the administrators of the school district and see if we can figure out a way to get on the boosters program with Salt River Project so that employees can contribute to that program and we're able to add an SRO or some kind of security to the school district here. And then to end this, I just think that the first line of defense is us as parents. When I first moved here, one of the reasons, I'm the one that created the Native American newsletter, which the school officials have seen. And I would like to see more involvement from our Native side with the school district and the community. And I feel like we need to get together and have that community involvement. And I wish I could spend a lot more time volunteering like I did where I came from, but unfortunately I'm a sole provider for my family and I have to work. And that was one of the suggestions that I had for NAPAC, which is the Native American Advisory Board Committee, which I serve on. And so I created that newsletter so that we can communicate with the community what we are doing and how we are recognizing our students, staff, and administrators. So our first newsletter came out last month. Our second newsletter is coming. So we're here also to hear your ideas, your suggestions, so that it can go into our newsletter. I support staff. I appreciate all the teachers, the administrators, and that's it. Thank you.
or district administration would be happy to talk to you about that. I mean, clearly our ideas, our thoughts on school safety, our procedures are evolving and changing nationwide, including our school district. And, you know, just this week, I know high school faculty met to talk about a new procedure for active shooter. And so that is something we're going to continue to work on and refine. Chief kind of alluded to this already. If we have an active shooter procedure, which includes running, then how do we get a good reunification plan so that we can get parents and students reunited? We haven't got that totally figured out yet, but that's an example of something that we are going to have to figure out. So that's a big deal. And an example of how our emergency plans at schools need to continue to improve and evolve. How will parents be informed? That's a good question too, an important one. And parents in the room probably know that we rely on, it used to be called the Connect Ed system. I think the company changed names. I think it's called Blackboard Connect now, but it's that message system that we have. It either comes to you in a voicemail, a text, or an email. And if you are not signed up for that, you make sure you contact the school secretary, get signed up for that, and get your information in there so that you can be alerted. Our use of that system continues to evolve as well, and we are we've always used it to maybe quell rumors and announce that, you know, there was a threat today at school. We dealt with it. We tried to send those messages out after about 6 o'clock because we don't want parents to think there's something going on at the school right now. But we are starting to use it even more during the school day for safety things, and our thoughts on that are evolving as well. So that is one of our front lines of defense. On other issues that involve police, we work quite closely with them on a communication plan as well. So those are some of the things that we're doing there. So we'll definitely be following up on this, and that's one thing I appreciate about the mayor's comments to start, that this is beginning of a dialogue, and I think we'll get some good ideas that come out of this over time.
So I'll take the next side of this. I want to put a plug in here on the Native American side. While I have no authority to speak for Ak-Chin, and I don't profess to, what I can talk about is I can talk about the relationship that since I've been around here, I've lived here for 15 years, which is almost the inception of the city, at least from an incorporation standpoint. And you know, since then, and especially since becoming mayor, I've really tried to move closer and closer into understanding the culture, and really, I consider our Native American neighbors, especially Ak-Chin, to be family. We are one community. If you talk to them about that, they'll talk about this. They are very involved in our school district. They have been very involved in the city in a variety of ways, and it goes so much further than just money, right? I mean, money's important. We're going to talk about that here in a second, but money is not everything. Involvement is important, and I think they've done a great job. Now, we can always go further, and we're always going to have to deal with those lines of sovereignty and yet community. It transposes that. I don't think anybody drives up the road and says, I've reached the county line, I can't go any further, right? You keep driving to where you need to go, and it's the same principle, and I think Ak-Chin's done a very good job of opening up their community to very much welcome us, just like we welcome them, and that history goes way back, long before we were ever a city. And so I continue to see that we're going to work closer and more closely together in a variety of things. Chief Stahl and Chief Leffler had talked about earlier about the working relationship we have with their professional departments. That's really important, and so we're going to continue to foster that, because at the end of the day, we each have specialties, we each have pros, we each have cons, and we each do things well and not so well. And so we're really trying to match those up so that we can utilize those resources together. The other thing I would talk about is the booster program. I think that's very much thinking outside the box. We've talked about that earlier. I think that's a great way to go about it, to help drive money. And I'll talk further about that in a second, but I want to hit on what Dr. Chestnut said, is that, you know, we didn't really ultimately know. You don't know what you don't know, right? And we didn't know what was going to come out of this meeting. We knew that we were going to have a great conversation. We knew we were going to have lots of questions, but we didn't know what the suggestions were going to be. And so that's why we're writing them down. And so, again, I told you at the beginning of this meeting that we don't know what the next step is other than taking these and getting together. And you talked about volunteerism. You know, what I need tonight is I need people to raise their hands, to sign up, to put their email out there so that we can tell you what the next step will be after we close this meeting here tonight. So that we can say, we're going to take this list and we're going to put it together and we're going to bring these stakeholders in and we're going to now start discussing them and what is the next step for moving forward. And the last thing I want to say on the funding side of things, and that is, Funding is the biggest challenge nationwide. You know, this isn't the 50s and 60s anymore where everything was new and being, you know, blown up and starting from scratch, and that everybody was working and we were all living in a very happy post-war time where there was lots of peace and lots of prosperity. And I know there were other wars, I understand, but my point is that times are different. Money times are different. Globally, as a country in this world, things are different. And so as such, we have to work really closely with our legislators and with our relationships, both tribal, with other cities, with other counties, with the state, and with the federal government. And that's where we come in. And one thing I want you to understand is that there is no one solution, there's no one answer, and there's no one thing that we're going to focus on and ignore the rest. Okay? That would be foolish. What we need to do is we need to look and we need to prioritize these things that we're putting up here, and we need to say, what can we tackle and hit as low-hanging fruit? You've already seen it here tonight where people have said, we're going to implement that. We can deal with that tomorrow. You know, we'll have a report for you here in the next few months. So that's stuff that's already come out of this meeting. Other things are longer term because we're going to have to deal with relationships, and we're going to have to deal with ideas, and we're going to have to raise dollars, and we're going to have to convince legislators that they're going to have to set buckets of money aside that allow us to do the things that we feel are important for this community. And we're going to have that ability to do it. And unless they give us that ability, we're not going to be able to. And then there's political realities, right? Remember I told you earlier as we started this that we weren't here to, you know, have a Second Amendment debate? Again, for every person that hates the Second Amendment, there's someone that loves it. And so we have to have the ability to deal with those things that we can deal with, and we have to take this out of the philosophical and put it into the practical, okay? And we have to understand that we need those funding sources so that we can make improvements locally, and that is absolutely crucial. So there is a political reality that we have to deal with, and so you have to look at the makeup of your legislature, and you have to say, okay, how do we provide these priorities in this list, and basically take it to them and say, what can you stomach? What can you work with us on? Will you listen to our stories like we have tonight? Listen to your stories. And that's the next step. So again, I told you earlier, be foolish not to say that, you know, we're only going to focus on one of those things and nothing else counts. They all count. But we have to put them in a priority list, and we have to deal with what can we attack in the way of low-hanging fruit? What is the next step? What is the next step? And some are going to be long-term, and we're going to need those hands raised high for a long period of time. And others are going to have to be slower, faster. It just depends where we fall. So hopefully that kind of answers the question.
You've kind of brought this thing around. It's 8:30. We want to respect their time, your time. There's a pile of questions over here that didn't get asked tonight. So if you did not get your question asked, would you please email it in? Can you throw that email back up there, the MUSD email? safetyforum@musd20.org, and I'm not sure who will be reading those, but someone will be reading those, perhaps forwarding those on to you.
It'll go to the school, and then we will coordinate with the city and the school district, and we'll start dealing with those and bring them back in the forum.
And as far as next steps, I mean, this was a really great experiment tonight. I want to applaud all of you for coming out tonight. I know a lot of people. I've been in this city for almost 15 years too, and it's a great city. Not without problems, because we're human beings. But I was talking to Mayor Price just this week. The solution to most problems start at the grassroots. You know, we can't change the Second Amendment, but you can. But not on this stage. You got to tell your congressmen, your senators, you got to go uphill. So we can only accomplish what we can accomplish here. But we've got a great, talented, skilled group of people. We've got a great school board. Talk to your school board. Those are your liaisons into the school. I mean, they're right here. Come to the school board meetings, correct? Talk to the school board. I mean, come to city council meetings. Speak out. That's what those things are for. And a lot of times we just don't use those in government. So next steps. Are we going to do something like this again? Do we think we'll do something like this again? No, I've never. Yeah.
You already scared him. Holy cow. Yeah, again, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have the perfect answer, but I think that after we give some time to go through the other comments that'll come through, we really, unfortunately, we live in a world where we're constrained by time, right? We couldn't get to everything tonight. We really want to hear from you, though. We're going to keep these cards. We're going to keep them. We're going to keep this list. We want to make sure you guys have copies of it. We will figure all this out. But the one thing I wanted to do after Destiny contacted me is I didn't want to wait. When you're trying to plan different jurisdictions, when you're trying to deal with different people and lots of different time schedules, and it can take a long time to get something of this size together. It can get even longer when you're trying to figure out how to organize the next steps. And I think that that's what we've tried to do, is just try to stay on top of it. We wanted to be forthright with you. We wanted you to know and feel comfortable that while nothing's perfect and you can't legislate every possibility out there, you can also feel comfortable in the fact that we are doing our part, and we need you to raise your hand to do yours. And there's one other side to it. Somebody mentioned it out there earlier before you go. I think there's a personal responsibility aspect as well, okay? And I think that we would be remiss if we sat here and believed that we could solve the world's problems. If we could solve this community's problems, the 5, 6 of us sitting up here, it's not possible, folks. We need your help, and there's a personal responsibility aspect. And so it comes not only from raising your hand to volunteer and finding funding mechanisms and talking to your legislators, but it also means that there are ways in your community. And I want to give a couple shouts out here, and so forgive me. I don't mean to make plugs, but I know that there are lots of different ways. I mean, whether it's personal safety you're after, you've got a great teacher here at Master Philis, right? He does some great personal training when it comes to self-defense. Priscilla's in the back over here from CASA. She does amazing things with students and kids and after-school programs and things that bring people together. And she finds ways to go out and search for grants and look for dollars. And she does amazing things. Help her organization and help her organization help you and your children. So there really is a personal responsibility that goes to each of us that is about what can we do to seek out that which is not right in front of us. It doesn't mean it's not here. And if it isn't here, then maybe it's your turn to start it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of resources, and we need to work together to utilize them. So I hope that's what we'll do. And like I said, you have my promise that we will take these next pieces, we'll start putting them together, and we'll start coming up with that next step. And if you've got your email, maybe we'll put it out in the way of media. We want you to know what the next step is. I don't think we'll be able to have a room of this size and work through some of these suggestions and prioritize them. We'll have to have stakeholders. It'll have to be a smaller working group. But if you're willing to be a part of that, we'd certainly love to have you. And then once we come to those conclusions, maybe the next stage is saying, this is what we want to present. These are the forums in which we want to move it forward to other communities as well as to our state legislature. So again, I hope that gives you some vision of the future and what we're trying to accomplish, and we're going to need your help to do it. So thank you very much.
I'll check. Before you check out, any closing? Anybody have any last things to say? You all good? List. Where can people tonight? We have emails outside. There's a sign-up sheet out there. If you want to be involved or be a part of these stakeholders, make sure you write on there, put me in, or I want to be a part of this. Circle your name, highlight your name, and they'll get to you. Yeah, you can email there too. Send an email here to safety. Thank you all for coming tonight.
What a good one.
Yeah. 5 minutes late, huh?
Yeah. I was thinking